All right, today the program we are watching, I'm not sure if it has a title or not. The title that's given to me is Historic 1955 United Nations Debate on Colonialism. I'll say that again for you guys. Historic 1955 United Nations Debate on Colonialism. I don't know if that's actually the title, but that's what I picked for us to watch today. And this is by the United Nations. I guess that makes sense. And this was published back in 1950s. So let's just dive in, shall we? A series of telecasts prepared by the Social Science Foundation of the University of Denver. That's interesting, a series of telecasts. So this is one of many debates held by the UN, prepared by the Social Science Foundation of the University of Denver. That's kind of random, but okay. The Revolution in the Colonial World. That's what the title of this program is. That's totally it. The Revolution in the Colonial World. Okay, cool. But that's funny though. They cut off the title right before it actually showed. I wonder if that was part of the original program or if that's part of the preservation process.
Social science. You are about to see a dramatization of an historic debate at the Unite.
Okay, we're losing a little bit of the audio here and there. There are some little audio glibs right there, but I feel like I understand what he's talking about still. Also, I feel like I recognize this entire set from somewhere. Wasn't this like Revolution and Europe's role in the world or something? Isn't that like this exact set? I'm pretty sure it is.
Debate at the Unite were still colonies, largely under the control of European powers.
All right, so this is a map of the colonies that still exist. Is that true? Didn't India get its independence in like 47, August 15th, 1947? Isn't that when India got its independence? I don't know. I'm pretty sure it is though. So I don't know. I don't know if this map is perfectly accurate or not.
1/3 of the population of the world lived in these areas. But since 1945, 20 nations have gained their independence.
Oh, okay, yeah, there you go. So that was prior to 1945. That was the map of the colonial world prior to 1945. But now we're entering the post-war era and the era of decolonialization. So we saw that India became independent. We saw the Arab states became independent. Israel started to exist there, and the northern African countries also gained their independence. What I'm interested about, South Africa, we have a Cape Colony down here, but then we have, what is this, Ghana over here, and then Liberia. That must be Liberia, isn't it? Yeah, that's little Liberia over there. That's so funny. And then hang on, so Yemen is still colonized, but Oman is not? That's interesting. I wonder if this map is like perfectly accurate or not. Like somebody in the comments, let me know if there are some issues with this map, but I'm going to take its word for it.
650 million people in less than 15 years have risen up to win their freedom from colonial rule.
That's interesting to hear the language they use around these colonial struggles, because I would assume that they wouldn't really be so supportive of them, but it sounds like they are. It sounds like they do support these colonies rising up and achieving independence, which is just a little surprising.
Is a revolution of unprecedented size and scope.
Yeah, honestly, like the post-World War II era was just a revolution after revolution in these colonized places. It really was an era of revolution. Yeah, this totally is the same set and the same guy probably from Revolution and Europe's role in the world. Like this is totally the same place.
The story of these years has been the story of a colonial people rising up after centuries of foreign rule to demand freedom. And it is the story of a great debate about colonialism.
The great debate about colonialism. That's funny that, like, even though people are achieving their independence from colonies, we're still debating colonialism. What's the debate still? You know, like, is colonialism good or bad? Like, what, is that the debate, really?
On the one side, the newly independent nations of the Middle East and Asia, and on the other...
Wow, he said the Middle East. That's funny. I feel like, didn't they have another term for the Middle East? I feel like in these old programs, I've heard another term. So I'm surprised that now it seems like they have adopted this new term, Middle East.
The other side, the colonial powers of the Western world. At the United Nations in September 1955, just such a debate took place.
Okay, so this is a reenactment of a debate on colonialism that took place within the United Nations. That's interesting. I wonder how much of the future was decided through this debate, if anything at all.
Subject, Algeria. Speaking for the anti-colonial bloc was Iraq.
Speaking for the anti-colonial bloc was Iraq. I like that it rhymes at the very least. The anti-colonial bloc, Iraq.
The days of enslaving other peoples are gone. Humanity...
Again, very interesting that Iraq can send a delegation of English speakers to debate other English speakers in the United Nations. Well, I guess this is a reenactment, right? So I guess maybe they were speaking Arabic. I feel like these Middle Eastern countries during this time actually openly embraced the West, at least a little. Like all of them, they're wearing suits, right? These Iraqi men are wearing Western business suits and ties. So it's kind of ironic that they're arguing against, foreign interference in their countries, but I guess I understand why.
Today must stand on the principles of justice, freedom, and equality.
And Saudi
See, what's weird about that, though, is that, everyone always posits these ideas of, freedom, but, here in America, our country was founded on those ideas, but, I just don't know if other countries were founded under the idea of, individual liberties and freedoms. That is to me, a very American sentiment that he just shared. In order to embrace anti-colonialism, you sort of have to embrace the ideologies of America. It's weird. It's a very weird thing because it's not perfectly the ideologies of America, but it is the thought of personal freedoms and liberty that is so strong in America. And I have to imagine part of the reason people around the world even had those thoughts to begin with was because of America.
The days of enslaving other peoples are gone.
The days of enslaving other people are gone. You see, that's funny because there are countries pretty close to Iraq right now that are still pretty much enslaving people.
Humanity today must stand on the principles of justice, freedom, and equality.
And
justice, freedom, and equality are just such American ideals. It's just, did people in Iraq really think those were the three most important things at the time? I have trouble believing that people valued those three values specifically without being influenced by the United States.
Are gone. Humanity today must stand on the principles of justice, freedom, and equality.
And Saudi Arabia.
French policy had its origin in the colonial activities of the 18th century, with all of their crudities.
Wow, so I'm getting to listen to Saudi Arabian English accents right now. This is pretty cool. I'm very much impressed with the fact that they're speaking English at all, let alone so well. They are so well spoken, it's impressive.
The Algerian people are within their rights when they demand independence from France.
On behalf of the colonial...
even the way he said that, he's very comfortable speaking English, it sounds like.
Colonial powers, Belgium.
Oh, hang on. So it's Iraq and Saudi Arabia on the anti-colonial side of this debate. Let's learn who's on the pro-colonial side of the debate.
From France.
On behalf of the colonial powers, Belgium.
Perfect. The best representation of colonialism abroad, Belgium. Yes, let's hear their arguments.
I am ready to admit, indeed I do admit, that there are many things to be changed. But in saying that, may I not also ask you to recognize that we are already on the right road and that enormous progress has been made in freeing colonial people?
That's such a slimy thing to say. Yes, I recognize all the atrocities we've committed, but we're not doing so many of those anymore. So can you just let us continue doing them? I don't know. It's a bit of a ridiculous argument to make. Hey, we're going the right direction. We're learning how to respect you. It's well, we didn't ask you to come here and not respect us. It's so funny, the position of entitlement that these colonialists come to this argument with. They deserve to have these other countries. Well, I guess they did. They took them by force, so they are theirs. It's funny that they believe that as well.
People from what may be called the colonialism of the 19th century.
For the anti-colonial bloc, India.
The anti-colonial bloc, hang on, I thought we were already with the anti-colonial bloc. So now we're learning about another anti-colonial bloc from India. You know, it's pretty ironic that all the people arguing against colonialism were themselves colonies, and all the people arguing for colonialism were themselves colonists. It's pretty ironic, wouldn't you say?
What may be called the colonialism of the 19th century.
For the anti-colonial bloc, India.
The United Nations adopted the ideals of the French Constitution, the conception of human rights, which the French had accepted over 150 years ago.
You know, I guess based on what he said, the rights, freedoms, liberties, and justice and everything, I know that comes from America, but I guess that in this sense comes more from the UN Charter. I guess the UN Charter is like the document that you reference when trying to make a point in an argument, in a debate around the UN. And the reason to me the words that were inspired by the UN Charter sound American is because the US had a very big role in shaping the UN and the UN Charter. So I feel like there is a through line from the American Revolution to all these anti-colonialists. Which honestly, like the American Revolution was like the first anti-colonial movement. I guess there was the Haitian Revolt, but the first big like anti-colonial movement.
Therefore, to argue that we must not come here and talk about the human rights for Algeria is the wrong thing.
Finally, of course, France.
Why does the French guy look literally like a supervillain? He has a literal monocle. Like, are you kidding me?
For over 100 years, Algeria has been united to France.
Like, and leave it to a Frenchman. Like, wasn't I talking about entitlement earlier? Like, leave it to a Frenchman to explain to all these people why their country belongs to him. You know, like, the audacity to even make this argument in front of these people. Like, nope, France controls Algeria, actually. Too bad. You know, like, how insane. I don't know.
Any Algerian, whether Muslim or Christian, is a French citizen.
Here's the thing, I will say France's relationship with Algeria was definitely different than France's relationship with like the rest of its colonies in Africa, but I still don't know if that's reason enough for France to continue to colonize Algeria.
How and with what right can anyone come here today and question something that has been a fact of national and international life for more than a century?
You know, I do understand France's claim to Algeria. I'm not saying I support it, but like they took Algeria from the Ottomans, which is fair. Like they didn't take them from just like native people. They took them from another foreign power. Especially when you also consider like how many French people moved to Algeria and how many people spoke French in Algeria during that time. I'm not trying to justify France's colonization of Algeria. I'm trying to put myself in the mindset of this guy who's arguing for France to continue to colonize Algeria. I'm trying to understand his argument.
The scene is the United Nations, September 1955. The occasion, an historic debate on Algeria.
An historic debate on Algeria specifically. That's interesting. That's interesting how we are focusing this all onto Algeria.
A debate which reflects profound conflict within the non-communist world.
Profound conflict within the non-communist world. That's an interesting lens to put on this debate as well. Like that kind of just reveals how that's how people thought of things back in that time. There were the communist countries and the non-communist countries. Like that's literally the first world is the non-communist countries. The second world is the communist countries. And then the third world is all the riffraff countries that just got mixed between them, you know?
What to do about colonialism? Now, the debate between the colonial powers and the anti-colonial bloc.
Just like, what a pointless debate, honestly. Like, the colonialist powers debating with their colonies whether their colonies should exist. Obviously, the colonialists believe that their colonies should exist. And obviously, the people who had their lands taken from them, I don't know, this just seems like a debate that would go nowhere.
Usually turns on two basic questions. The first of these is human rights.
All right, so the debate is going to center around these two pivotal questions. What are these questions?
The first of these is human rights.
All right, that's a pretty funny suggestion because, yeah, I guess that is definitely something that you need to take into account, but like that is also just not something that the colonists would take into account. You know, like human rights really only exists in this post-World War II era. Like prior to World War II, human rights didn't exist. So I don't know, it's hard to judge the actions of these colonists using our modern framework of understanding and respecting others. I don't know, it's tough to retroactively judge the colonists.
Here is what the UN Charter has to say in part about human rights.
Again, like the UN Charter might say this, but like the UN Charter didn't exist when these colonies were established. So like, what does that matter?
We reaffirm our faith in fundamental human rights, in social progress and
fundamental human rights. So all you have to do to maintain a colony is accept that you have to give the fundamental human rights to the people that you take over. Interesting. Interesting how that's a little too much to ask.
And better standards of life based on the principle of equal rights and self-determination of peoples. Now, neither side in the dispute over colonialism disagrees with these principles.
That's interesting. Neither side disagrees. I can think of some disagreements that people would have, but I'm glad to hear that nobody actually disagreed.
But how they are to be put into practice in specific cases, well, this is an entirely different matter. In our case study, the Algerian debate of 1955,
the Algerian debate of 1955. I hope this is like a historic debate. I mean, I guess that was the title, right? I hope other people know about this debate and also think of it as historic. I hope this isn't just like a random discussion. Like, I hope some decision was made as a result of this debate or something.
A great deal of attention was paid to the question of human rights for the Algerian people.
What, in fact, is the ultimate objective of this debate? Is it freedom for the Muslim peoples of Algeria? In that case, I ask, are they not already free? Do they not already enjoy the universal right to vote? Are they not already represented in local assemblies, the Algerian Assembly, and all the national assemblies?
The French say...
Honestly, you know, that's a pretty fair point. Like, if your country is a democracy and all the people, including the colonized Algerians, get to partake in that democracy as equal citizens, I don't know. That is a fair argument. I don't know. Like, that seems like they deserve to be there, or at least like they're not treating them poorly. I don't want to say that I agree with this guy, but I see where he's coming from.
Of course we believe in freedom, but the Algerians are already free.
Let us face facts. The French
See, but that's the thing. They're not free so long as they're in a state that isn't Muslim.
discriminate in Algeria against the non-European Muslim population by denying them equal opportunity for education and equal political rights. In the Algerian Assembly, 900,000 French Europeans have an equal number of seats with 9 million Muslims.
Yeah, okay, so that's the numbers that I didn't actually know. So the 900,000 French people in France had the same amount of political power as the 9 million Algerians. So yeah, a bit of an imbalance. I'm now on his side again. See, leave it to the French guy to not tell me the numbers, like to just make me assume that they were like equal numbered. But I guess when the numbers are like that, you are kind of reducing the political power of a very specific group of people in your population.
Thus, 1 European equals 10 Muslim in Algeria.
From generalities to specifics and a
Yeah, honestly, like the fact that there were Muslims in Algeria, like it would have worked as France. Like, I don't know, sorry, but like if it's Muslim majority, it's not France.
rather embarrassing subject for the French.
Of course, the identical thing holds true in the National Assembly in Paris. Algeria is allowed 30 deputies to the lower chamber of the French Parliament. 15 deputies represent some 900,000 French residents in Algeria. The other 15 deputies...
Look at the French guy's face. Do you see? Like, he's looking up there. He is giving, like, the most weak boy energy ever. He is giving French boy energy for sure. Like, he's just giving, like, such attitude. Like, what a French boy.
represent 9 million Algerians.
What I'm forgetting is that this is a staged play as well. This is not the actual debate. But I feel like... I don't know. I feel like these guys are getting as heated. Like, I think they all do care.
Muslim.
I have frequently in the past, as well as today, listened to delegates discussing the features of French electoral law and telling us that it ought to be overhauled.
See, so France could have kept Algeria if they just gave the Algerians an equal vote. But here's the question. If you gave Algerians an equal vote, would the Algerians have just voted to not be part of France anymore? Probably. So I guess what we're learning is that, like, it's pretty much impossible to keep these two places together without some colonialism involved.
But they made the mistake of awakening my curiosity, and I went to the trouble of looking up electoral law in their own countries.
Oh shit, yeah, exactly, right? Okay, so we're talking about electoral laws in Muslim countries now. That's what the colonialists are bringing to the table. It's like, you're gonna criticize us for letting our people vote? Like, you're ruled by... Let's listen to the argument before I make my own arguments.
I will not conceal from you my surprise at finding that in countries of many of the speakers that preceded me here, there was no electoral law at all.
Who are you electing in Iraq? Dang, Saudi Arabia? They have a king. Like, there is no election in Saudi Arabia. Honestly, that kind of won me over. Even if you don't give the Algerian Muslims equal votes, at least they have votes, you know? Like, they don't even have votes in their regular countries. Like, I don't know. That's that's kind of a fair argument if you ask me.
The tables are turning. Good electoral law.
Like, they're gonna argue like that's their culture, like having a sultan or an emir or whatever, that's their thing. And we don't need to apply Western democratic values to them, but like, they're applying it to Algeria. So I don't know. I don't know. That kind of blew the doors wide open for me.
Good electoral laws, it seems, are everyone's business.
Like, I definitely agree in the concept that we shouldn't colonize people and there shouldn't be colonies. But then you have to ask yourself, like, well, if these people are going to deny them their rights and these people are going to take their stuff but give them their rights, I don't know. I don't know.
Good electoral laws, it seems, are everyone's business.
It is true that we don't have good electoral law.
That's so funny. He's admitting to it. He's like, it's true, we don't have good electoral laws. No, you don't have any electoral laws. None of you vote for anyone.
We recognize our backwardness. But the fact is that we are free to develop ourselves.
See, I don't know. I don't know about that argument. We're free to develop ourselves. That sounds like the argument a person would make who stands to benefit from controlling their own people. You know, like, he is arguing that they don't have democracy in Iraq, but the people of Algeria deserve democracy so that they cannot be part of France. This is a pretty biased argument, to be honest. I don't agree that, like, they should be able to run Iraq like a kingdom or caliphate, but at the same time criticize France for giving Algerians a vote in their election. You know, like, that is pretty hypocritical. And honestly, when you think about it from a human rights perspective, what's worse, giving a people a sort of vote or not giving your people a vote at all? You know, like, when you disenfranchise your entire population, I don't know. I do not see that as being morally superior to colonizing people. Like, that is pretty much colonizing your own people. When you deny your own people the ability to choose their leadership, you're pretty much just colonizing yourself. So I don't know. I feel like their argument is kind of falling apart here.
And it is this blessing of freedom that is most fundamental and basic for all the people who wish to develop themselves.
The type of freedom that is most sentimental. So they want their religious freedom. I feel like that is what they're arguing. I feel like that's the unspoken aspect of this all, is the Muslim people don't want to belong to a Christian nation. That is totally fair. I understand that 100%. They need to say that, you know? They just need to say, we're Muslim, you're Christian, we don't want to do this. You know, like, that's fair. That makes perfect sense.
As a human being worthy of that name.
The Belgian delegate has just described how certain states who ignore the very existence of the right to vote and the elementary rules of justice.
Yeah, right? Honestly, I'm I'm starting to side with the colonists on this one. Like, how can you judge these guys when you guys run your own countries like that? I shouldn't even say it. I feel like I'm getting in trouble on the internet just saying I'm siding with colonial Belgium and France. But that's the beauty of debate, right? That's the whole point of debate. But no matter what side you think you fall on, the arguments are really what shape your opinion by the end. And I am definitely having my opinion shaped by the arguments of these colonists.
Had the temerity to attack France. France will not tolerate insults or slanders against its civilizing work at a time
Against its civilizing work. Yeah, like there is definitely that weird aspect of we're civilizing them as well, but like, whatever.
France will not tolerate insults or slanders against its civilizing work at a time when countries still exist in which minorities are subjected to cruelly discriminatory treatment.
See, that is interesting that he's arguing that in these countries, their minorities are discriminated against very harshly, which, again, knowing a little bit about that region is pretty true. They do discriminate against their minorities just the same as everyone else. So, I don't know. I don't know. This argument is kind of getting me.
Where abject poverty is fatalistically accepted.
Yeah, like this guy literally belongs to a country that is ruled by a king. The people don't vote on their leaders at all, and yet he's complaining that the Algerians don't get an equal vote in the French election. That's pretty hypocritical if you ask me. Like, shouldn't they focus on fixing these Muslim countries and giving the people of these Muslim countries democracy before you criticize other democratic countries for not having perfect democracies? I don't know. Though, again, I do understand that the Middle East and the Arab world is culturally different. So them denying themselves democracy or whatever is, from their perspective, different than us denying them democracy. I feel like that's something that I really just don't have a mind for, is how democracy and politics works within the framework of Islam, because you have to remember that, like, that is the most important thing here. The Algerians don't want to not be part of France because they don't like France. They don't want to be part of France because they don't want to be Christian because they are Muslim. So, like, that is the divide that is actually wedging these parties apart.
Discriminatory treatment, where abject poverty is fatalistically accepted.
Where abject poverty is fatalistically acceptable. Like, he is really driving it home with these guys. Like, they do have a lot more problems than France has, so I don't know.
Where the illiteracy rate is as high as 80%, and the infantile mortality rate, unfortunately, in the region of 800 per thousand. Let these countries appeal to the United Nations for guidance and assistance.
That's so funny. He's actually just straight up roasting them. He's saying your people can't read, your babies die when you try to give birth. How about you ask for help from the UN instead of criticizing people like us? Like, that's his argument pretty much.
In the efforts which it is their duty to make at home, therein lies the true mission of the United Nations.
Okay, that's the true mission of the United Nations, he says. The true mission of the UN is to help countries like Saudi Arabia and Iraq actually improve the living conditions for their populace. And he's arguing that the purpose of the UN is not to punish colonial powers like France and to reward, separatist movements. That's a little bit weaker of an argument, but I still get where he's coming from.
It is through constructive work that it should expand its activities.
Yeah, through constructive work. So he says, like, don't just destroy things. Like, the UN isn't meant to break countries apart. The UN is meant to, like, build countries up. So I kind of get that argument, to be honest.
The colonial powers have turned the discussion to an area where France's record is rather good.
One thing has astonished me in this debate. To listen to certain representatives, one would think that there's only one single human right, the right of a people to political independence. Now, far be it from me.
I mean, I don't know. I don't need to make a whole argument about this, but there is sort of only one human right, and that's the freedom, like to do anything. Like, any right eventually comes back down to, like, having the ability to do it in the first place.
To deny for one moment the importance of that human right. But the right of a people to political independence is not the only right that must be guaranteed. Amongst those rights, we must include common justice and also, of course, social justice.
I hope the Belgian delegate will open the charter at chapter 11 and read along with me Article 73, which reads, to develop self-government, to take due account of the political aspirations of the people, and to assist them in the progress.
Dude, look at this guy's ring. Like, these are rich guys. Whatever their position within the government is, I guess they're diplomats, but they're definitely rich. Like, he's got a pinstripe suit. Look at these rings and his watch. Like, even though he comes from Iraq, I don't know, he's got some money.
The development of their free political institutions according to the particular circumstances of each territory and its people and their varying stages of advancement. It is our obligation to see to it whenever dependent people are mature and call for self-determination and freedom, these organizations must assist them.
We have returned to the
All right, so his argument is pretty much, his argument was kind of complicated and very wordy, but I feel like, I get his argument. Like, obviously, when people say they want freedom, like, it is your responsibility to listen to them, but I don't know.
question of political independence. Listen to the French delegate.
Much has been made of the fact that there are peoples in Algeria who differ in race, language, and religion from the population of continental France. And the conclusion has immediately been drawn that to be free, these people must be separate.
So he's saying that France has minority groups in Algeria or whatever, which aren't the minority. The Muslims were definitely the majority. But what he's saying is that, like, countries can have minorities. Like, you can't just have a country that is purely one race, because if you do that, then that's how you get the Nazis, pretty much. You have to be able to accept some group of minorities existing in your country, or else you are going to try to form an ethno-state, which is just a bad thing to try to do, trust me. So again, I sort of get his argument. Like, yeah, these people are minorities in our country, but like, you can't ban a country from having minorities, or you can't say that every minority group in every country deserves their own independence. Like, even if they are a minority, even if they are different, sometimes minorities just have to exist in order for a country to exist. Like, there are no perfect ethno-states. Like, there is no actual race in existence. That's a social construct, you know? So, like, I get what he's arguing here as well. It's such a shame that I agree, honestly.
This is a strange argument. Are we to understand that it is impossible for men of different races and religions to live together in peace as citizens of the same state?
So he's arguing that if you take Algeria away from France, pretty much what the United Nations is saying is that people of different religions or people of different languages or different cultures or anything cannot coexist. Like, you have to separate people based on these things, which again, that's the choice of the nation, right, to make, whether or not we are these people or those people or whatever.
Could anyone in this forum wish to champion racial theories or provoke religious fanaticism?
Of course not.
We believe, and millions of people throughout the world share our belief, that it is possible for the Algerians and us to live side by side in peace, closely united in a...
Do the Algerians ever get, like, flustered inside when they hear the French talk about them like that? Like, I don't know, the French never talk about anyone as lovingly as they talk about the Algerians. Like, why did they want the Algerians to be part of France so bad to begin with? You know, like, I understand colonizing Algeria and making it like a new France, but I don't get fighting so hard to make the Algerians French people. I don't quite understand that, but I appreciate that he's working that hard.
Single political organization.
But the real fact of the matter can be put quite simply. There are two people in Algeria, the French and the Algerians. And while the Algerians...
See, but again, I feel like that's a weak argument, because Algeria is France. Technically, those are all French Algerians, or at least that's the argument that the French would make. So, I don't know. I mean, but I get his argument as well, that the Algerians are culturally, linguistically, religiously different than the French. They are not minority groups within France. They are an entirely different group of people. That's what he's arguing. Which is fair. The Algerians are just different from the French, but I don't know.
Is fighting for liberation. France is using brutal repressive measures to quell this urge for freedom.
France is using repressive measures to quell this urge for freedom. Well, I don't know. I mean, again, like, if people are just attacking other people in your territory, then, like, you do have a right to attack them back. I don't know. Again, this is a very difficult debate for me to fall into a side on.
Everyone is in favor of freedom and justice.
Yeah, I'm definitely in favor of freedom and justice. This guy gets me.
But how to achieve these rights is the first basic issue in the dispute over colonialism. The second issue is the question of jurisdiction. To whom does the colony rightfully belong? Now, this is very important.
That is interesting. The jurisdiction. I mean, to whom does the colony belong? I mean, the fact that it is a colony suggests that it belongs to somebody, but it's like, who does this territory belong to? The people who live there or people across the sea from it? I don't know. That's an interesting question.
To whom does the colony rightfully belong? Now, this is very important. For one thing, if it can be shown that a colony rightfully belongs to the colonial power,
If a colony can be shown to rightfully belong to the colonial power, I'm curious about that because that suggests that you can justify having colonies. Like that pretty much says like we'll hear you out. Like we do believe that some countries should have colonies for some reasons. What they are, I don't know, but like that's suggesting that like you can make the argument that you deserve to have a colony. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what this is suggesting.
in this case France, then the international community and the UN has no business discussing the question. The UN Charter puts it this way. The United Nations is not authorized...
See, again, this is a very interesting question. I actually am very much enjoying this debate now. The United Nations is not authorized to intervene in matters which are essentially within the domestic jurisdiction of any state. So the UN can't tell any individual nation what to do within its own borders. So France is arguing that you can't tell us what to do with Algeria because that is within our own borders as well, which is kind of like a paradox again. Like if you take someplace over and consider that your integral territory, then the UN can't tell anyone to not take over anything. Then the UN has like no function.
...to intervene in matters which are essentially within the domestic jurisdiction of any state.
I love the inclusion of the word essentially too. Like essentially, you know, like they don't quite know what it means, but like if it's essentially within the domestic jurisdiction, you know, like how vague.
Now, just as everyone believes in human rights, so everyone believes in the principle of domestic jurisdiction. The principle, that is, that each nation ought to run its own internal affairs. But the real question is, how do you...
Yeah, I feel like no one is arguing with that. Like every country should be in charge of itself. That kind of is just the concept of sovereignty.
...decide whether or not a colonial power exercises legitimate jurisdiction in its colony.
Whether or not a colonial power exercises legitimate jurisdiction over its colony. So that's interesting that they have to decide whether this colony qualifies as a place where you have legitimate jurisdiction over. That's interesting. I keep thinking of Denmark and Greenland, you know, like I feel like that's a place where they do, even though it is a colony, they do have like legitimate claim to. I don't know. I don't want to say too much about Greenland though.
In the Algerian debate of 1955, colonial and anti-colonial powers struggled with the question of jurisdiction, and once again were sharply divided.
Yeah, again, here's the funny part though. Like I guarantee you, like these other countries would have argued the other point if the shoe was on the other foot, you know? Like the only reason they're making this argument is because it's being made towards France.
My statement will be brief, but...
I love how the French man is doing this. I love that.
very direct. Since 1830, that's for more than 120 years, Algeria has been an integral part of French territory.
Yeah, I mean, they did hold it for like 120 years. That is like, I don't know, kind of grandfathered in. That is older than any grandfather. So I kind of buy that argument as well. I really did not expect to be siding with the colonists here, but I feel like that argument stands. Like France did control Algeria for over 100 years. I don't know, they have the precedent. And they took Algeria, I don't know if I said this already, but I know they took Algeria from the Ottomans. So it's not like they just conquered it willy-nilly. They took it from another foreign power. I don't know if the Algerians considered the Ottomans a foreign power in the same way they considered the French a foreign power. Again, the Ottomans were at least Muslim, so I think they honestly would have been fine being under the Ottomans, but not being under the French, again, as a result of religion.
Every international treaty that we have passed, including the United Nations Charter, applies to Algeria as French territory, and no one has ever thought of disputing that fact.
In Algeria, I remind you, live 1 million European and 9 million Muslims. It is a
1 million Europeans and 9 million Muslims. But here's the thing, like, what's really the difference between them? Again, besides religion, right? Like, the Algerians, are they really racially different than the people on the other side of the Mediterranean? I mean, maybe, but like, I wouldn't consider them like a whole other group of people. Like, they're still part of the same, I don't know, they're still like kind of white. I don't know. I don't know if I want to say that, but like Middle Eastern people are still considered white. So I don't know. They're still the same race.
change in the age of freedom and equality. We are told that Algeria belongs to France. Algeria, where 9/10 of the population are not French at all.
Yeah, at the same time, that is like a stronger argument still. Like, Algeria doesn't deserve freedom. Algeria deserves to declare its own independence and win that war. You know, like, if Algeria had the numbers, then they should be able to accomplish their own independence.
I do not say that Algeria belongs to France. I say that Algeria is France.
Yeah, see, that is the argument that the French people made. I know that they believe Algeria is not like another country that belonged to France. Algeria is a region of the country of France to them.
For over 100 years, Algeria has been united to France on an equal footing with the Ile-de-France, Brittany or Auvergne, such that any Algerian, whether Muslim or Christian, is a French citizen.
The French
That's fair too. They were French citizens. So I don't know. I have not picked a side yet.
appeal to history and French law, but these are not the only criteria.
The attitude which the French appear to take is that since Algeria is a part of France, an Algerian is a Frenchman. We lived in India for many centuries as a dependency. We were called at one time British subjects. That was bad enough. But nobody dared to call us Englishmen or told us that we should call ourselves Englishmen.
See, that's an interesting argument as well. I like the perspective that the Indian guy is bringing to this. That like when India was colonized, they were not considered English people. They were considered maybe English subjects, but they were not considered English citizens. So the fact that France considers Algerians to be French kind of does illustrate a difference in their colonial relationship than the British had with the Indians. I don't know exactly what the point of this argument is. I don't know if he's arguing for or against, but it feels like he's arguing for colonialism.
So to an Algerian, or to anybody who's not French, to be called a Frenchman is not a great honor, in our humble opinion.
Oh, it's not an honor to call somebody a Frenchman who isn't a Frenchman? I kind of misread that. I thought it would be an honor. I thought he was impressed that the French thought the Algerians were also Frenchmen, but it doesn't seem like that was the case.
What are the opponents of France doing? They're discussing the scope, validity, the wisdom of a number of French laws. And what laws are these? Some of the laws in question are over a century old. What you are actually doing is discussing a whole group of French constitutional laws. The French Constitution of 1875 and that of 1948 govern the relations between France and Algeria.
But there is something new. There are no Muslim peoples in Algeria. There is no Algerian nation in that part of the world. The inhabitants of Algeria are French. They are not Algeria. And with this simple affirmation, an attempt is made to erase a whole chapter in the history of the brilliant Muslim civilization.
All right, so that is the true argument here. I feel like we're getting to the crux of the argument. So saying that the Algerians are not actually Algerians, they're French, erases the Algerian history that existed there. And the Algerian history that existed there was one of belonging to a Muslim empire or Muslim caliphate or whatever. So pretty much we can see that this argument is entirely about religion.
And we in the United Nations must accept with blind religious faith what the Constitution of the French Republic says. An attempt is being made to hoodwink this assembly.
See, I do appreciate that argument, though, that the UN can't just accept whatever the French Constitution says, right? Because then every other country's constitution holds equal weight, and then they will all conflict with one another, and then there will be no peace. So you can't just say, well, the French Constitution says this, so that's international law. So I do appreciate his argument on that point.
Over a century of military and political occupation of Algerian territory, and the subjection of a whole people to a foreign yoke do not, in our opinion, constitute an irrevocable title of ownership and dominion.
The Saudi Arabian delegate argues that Algeria was conquered and therefore the United Nations has the right to intervene in Algerian affairs. But Flanders, Burgundy, Aquitaine and Roussillon.
All right, so he's saying that because France admits to conquering Algeria, that the fact that Algeria was conquered means this problem falls under UN jurisdiction. But what he's about to argue is that France was constructed from a series of conquests. All the regions of France were only added to France as a result of it expanding in scope. So you can't really just limit a country based on its invasions or whatever, because that's how countries naturally spread anyway. And again, if you applied this same logic to the other countries, to Saudi Arabia or Iraq, you would have the same exact issues. I don't know, I feel like I'm agreeing with this guy again.
Flanders, Burgundy, Aquitaine and Roussillon, French provinces with French character no one dreams of disputing, were also conquered.
Yeah, that's exactly what I guessed he would say, that these French provinces were also once upon a time conquered. So you can't just question a nation's territory based on what was conquered and what wasn't conquered, because pretty much every country conquered its own territory. Like, that's how countries come into existence. So again, I kind of agree with them.
If we were to assume a right to question all frontiers resulting from wars, there would no longer be any security for any state possessing such frontiers.
Yeah, that's fair too. As soon as you start questioning, like, well, who really owns this if they conquered it, then you kind of just opened Pandora's box, you know, like who has a reason to invade who for what territory now? I do agree with what he's saying here.
Suppose the United States of America had adopted a law in its Congress claiming that the Philippines were part of the United States.
Oh man, the US is getting a mention. I like this. I like that even though we're not involved, like we are still being used as like a rubric.
And later, the noble people of the Philippines rose and asked for their independence and freedom. Could anyone say that the Philippines was part of the United States?
This is a bit of a weak argument, though. One, this did happen. This all literally did happen. We did come into possession of the Philippines. I'm sure he knows that, though. I'm sure that's why he's saying that. But we also gave them their independence. But I guess we did really, we really messed with them too. So honestly, I don't know that much about Philippine independence or why we gave the Philippines its independence. I have to imagine it had something to do with World War II. Like the Japanese probably conquered the Philippines from us, and then we conquered them back, and then we gave them their freedom afterwards. I don't know. That is an interesting question.
And therefore, one was not entitled to deal with the issues because it involved the internal jurisdiction of the United States.
But here's the difference, is the US and the Philippines are like 5,000 miles apart. They're the Pacific Ocean apart from one another. And like our societies have not had that much interaction over our histories. Whereas France and Algeria have been across from the same sea for their entire histories. Like people have traveled back and forth between them. They were both part of the Roman Empire. They were both part of the East Roman Empire or whatever that part was. Like I feel like this line of logic ignores the historic relationship France and Algeria did have with one another, because the US and the Philippines did not have the same sort of relationship as France and Algeria.
The States, but this is an exact simile.
But he calls it an exact simile. But no, I would kind of argue that it's not. It's so weird that I'm disagreeing. I really thought I'd be agreeing with the anti-colonialists, but here I am. That's how you know I'm honest, by the way. Like, I'm not trying to agree with anyone. I'm seeing which arguments actually make sense in my mind. And I hope you all watching appreciate that I'm not trying to guide any of you towards any direction. I am just trying to figure out for myself what makes sense.
If the Assembly decides to discuss the French problem of Algeria, there would be nothing in the future to stop each of us from exercising the right to intervene in the domestic affairs of any of us.
Yeah, again, that is fair, though. Like, how can you tell France to do this, but then turn around and say no when France tells you to do something? I guess I understand his argument, but he very much just doesn't want to lose Algeria.
That would be the end of security for many and independence for the weakest. In my country's opinion, the decision that will be taken by the Assembly will be far more serious for the United Nations than for France. The future of this organization will be at stake.
He's so French. He's so, like, he is getting worked up. We have to remind myself that this is a staged debate. This is not like the actual historical debate. This is like a recreation. But this guy is really playing the part, it feels like.
So everyone agrees there must be no interference in the domestic affairs of any state. But how do you decide what are domestic affairs?
See, yeah, that's the problem now. If everything is a domestic affair, then again, there's no use in having the UN.
France attempts to prove that the Algerian question is her own business. A century of history and 100 years of French law prove that Algeria is French. The anti-colonial bloc, on the other hand, insists that this is not just a squabble within the French household. History and law, they argue, do not make an Algerian Muslim a Frenchman if he doesn't choose to be one.
Again, it's all about the Muslim, right? Like, it's not about French law or anything. It's about these people are Muslim. They don't accept your rules. They don't accept your laws. They want to live in a society that is not your society. I feel like that's the argument that we're not having here. And the bigger argument is like, do you give them that religious freedom or not? Are you, the colonizer, obligated to give the colonized like their own land back? I don't know.
So how do you decide whether or not a colonial problem is a domestic dispute or one which it is legitimate for the international community to discuss and to act upon? Human rights and domestic jurisdiction, everyone agrees with these ideas in principle. However, in their practical application, there is profound disagreement. Inevitably and ominously, the debate now moved toward a complete impasse.
We come now to the next aspect. Even if we were entitled to discuss this, and if we're not committing a breach of the rules in discussing it, should we discuss it? That is a very legitimate question to ask. Is it political?
I like how the Indian guy seems like the one who isn't really biased. Like, he is not Muslim, so he's not arguing on behalf of the Algerians, but he is still a colonized person or a person who comes from a colonized country. So he still has empathy for Algeria. I don't know. I appreciate his position in this argument because it very much feels like the two Muslim people and the two European people are the ones actually arguing, and he's like the moderator.
Politically wise, what are the gains and the losses? Let me say, we of India would be belying our own liberation if we leave behind too often still await liberation. In the United Nations, there are at least 20 or 22 states who would not be here if the argument raised by France prevailed.
So what he just said is there are at least like 20 nations that wouldn't be in the UN if they went with what France was saying, which I guess is fair. I guess if there was already a precedent set, which I guess we watched at the beginning, right? All those countries that already decolonized, including India. So I guess he is trying to apply the same logic that led to India being decolonized to Algeria as well. It must have felt like he was trying to free these countries, right? To free them from colonial rule, which I guess it kind of is that. It's just like that's not how the French viewed it.
The whole basis of their existence stands challenged. That is to say, if an empire cannot be overthrown, if a conqueror cannot be displaced, if lost liberty cannot be rewon, then very few of us will have a place here. I think the discussion of the Algerian question will assist in allowing some of the pent-up steam to be released without explosions.
That's a very good metaphor. This is a very tense situation, and you have to release that tension somehow, and hopefully that's not in violence. But I guess that metaphor holds true for pretty much every decolonization effort.
It will give the Algerian people some confidence in that the other people are thinking of them.
After 3 or 4 weeks of discussions, what could we say?
3 or 4 weeks of discussions, man, imagine going back and forth like this for 3 and 4 weeks. Like, what is there even left to say after a while? Like, I'm pretty sure we know the framing of this argument. You know, like, they're Muslim and they're not Muslim. Like, that's it. Like, they deserve to be free because they are not of the same culture as the country that presides over them.
We could say that the Algerian problem has disturbed us. We could ask the French government to take urgent steps to deal with it. We could ask it to seek a peaceful solution acceptable to...
Dude, the French guy is still just giving what a performance, man. Like, he's just nodding along with his eyes closed. Like, he really is giving attitude. French boy attitude, for sure.
the majority of the Algerians. That is the most we could do. What, then, is the object of all this debate? Why must all this political wisdom, all this human sagacity be mixed with so much...
Human sagacity. That is a term I haven't ever heard. Sagacity. I don't even know what sagacity means, to be honest. That is like a new term to me.
emotion, so many insults, so many wounding remarks.
So many wounding remarks. Does that mean they were just being like really mean to each other throughout the entirety of this? I hope so. I hope they were actually like wounding each other's feelings during this debate.
When my people read daily in the press that their brethren in Algeria, who are both Arab and Muslims, are being dealt with by helicopters, by airplane, by French armed forces, that so many Algerians have been shot and that so many villages have been destroyed, what would one expect the repercussions to be concerning the relations of my people with the people of France?
See, that's the thing. He just exposed his true thoughts. He said, my people. He didn't say Algerians. He didn't say Arabs, Muslims. He said, my people. He perceives Algeria as being an extension of the Arab and the Muslim world. And that is the true argument here, is they do not want part of the Arab world in the possession of Europeans. I feel like he exposed his true thinking about this all. My people. He said, my people.
I know that as a speaker I am given to polemics, and I must sometimes make a great effort to restrain myself. But I must admit that what I have witnessed here today, I am saying it as kindly as possible without raising my voice, has struck me as bizarre.
You know, I say that all the time too. What I've seen today, I can only describe as bizarre. I like that he just said that. I wish I could get that soundbite. I wish I could just have a button for me to say, it's bizarre, like him.
Some representatives and delegates are really, I'm looking for the most parliamentary and least offensive term, very imprudent.
You can tell he is kind of pissed. Was this a real debate? Like, were these the real debaters? Maybe that's the case. Maybe these are the actual people who had this debate and now they're reenacting it for the cameras. I can't imagine they would do that, but like, these people really seem invested in this argument, which just wouldn't be the case if this was purely a reenactment. Or maybe it is, but I don't know. I'm getting emotionality from these people, which is just hard for me to believe if they're not actually having this argument.
To my opinion, international life can only be based on two great virtues. The spirit of moderation and the spirit of understanding.
The spirit of moderation and the spirit of understanding. Those are the two great virtues upon which world peace sits in this guy's mind.
There's no international question in which one country is entirely right and the other entirely wrong.
That's very true. There is no situation where one country is entirely right or wrong. Well, you know, I don't know. I can think of some examples where that's not the case, but all right, fine.
The truth is quite otherwise. The first virtue of a politician who aspires to international politics is to try to understand. The second is...
That's very good too. I can't argue with that at all.
Moderation. There's nothing gained in international affairs by rushing...
Dude, you can just tell this French guy is pissed off. Like, either he's pissed off or he's the world's best actor, because he looks like he does not want to be here anymore. Like, his facial expressions, he is, like, so funny. He is so French.
Rushing headlong into extreme and exaggerated solutions. A true international policy is, I'm not ashamed to proclaim it, an international policy based on compromise.
International policy based on compromise. Yeah, see, for me, like, that's the only way to actually find solutions to any of these problems, is to compromise. There is no solution in which one country gets what they want and everyone else doesn't get what they want. Like, the UN only works, world peace only works with compromise.
What then is to be done? The answer is simple. We must trust France.
I don't know. I don't know if that's the moral of the story here, but I appreciate him trying to back up his boy.
Now, does France deserve our trust? I was shocked indeed to hear it implied here that France is imperialistic, colonist, bloodthirsty, and cruel.
That's that's pretty funny, but that's pretty true too. I don't know. I can't really argue with that statement. They were imperialistic. They were imperialistic. They were colonistic. What were the other examples? Cruel? I bet they were cruel at least a few times. Bloodthirsty. You know, it's pretty funny though that like again, this is coming from a Belgian, you know, like, oh, well, you know, if the French are bloodthirsty and cruel, what does that make us? What does that make the Congo? You know, it's like that also makes that bloodthirsty and cruel is what that means, you know, like, I don't know. It's tough to hear this argument coming from somebody else who was also a colonizer.
I do not say that all the pages of French history are equally fine, but where is the country that has bestowed on mankind so many and such diverse benefits, intellectual, scientific, and political?
I have an answer for this question, but I'm going to let him finish asking it first.
And before condemning such a people outright in thoughtless terms, the critics should pause and reflect upon the long tradition of a glorious past.
My
The
delegation.
long tradition of the glorious past. They should reflect on the long tradition of the glorious past. That is why France should not decolonize Algeria, for the long tradition of the glorious past. That's a bit of a weak argument.
Delegation regrets to say that we have had no evidence that France deserves our trust.
I love how he just said that. Like, that is pretty true. The way the French guy looked at him, too, he's so insulted. This must be, like, a real interaction. These can't be actors. You cannot act insulted like that.
We have little confidence in any act of France with regard to Algeria, and it would do the United Nations no honor to ignore the appeal for justice by the Algerian people.
Yeah, I feel like it's also fair to say that you can't trust France in relation to its own, like, benefit. France is going to be biased in keeping Algeria, you know? Like, obviously you can't trust them wholesale.
It would be perilous to place their fate at the mercy of France's ruthless forces.
Very well. Let us suppose that the argument opposed to mine prevails. What is the very least that France could do?
What is the very least France could do? I like that question too. What is the very least France can do?
It is what all of us would do if we were in France's position. It would be not to submit to the strange verdict of this assembly, but rather to say, continue the procedures you have started, but without me. I contest your jurisdiction, and I am leaving. And whatever...
Interesting. So his final argument is pretty much that if any of these guys were in the position of controlling France, what would they do? They would all say, Algeria, continue doing what you're doing already, but we're not going to be a part of you anymore. He's saying that, like, there's no different thing that they'd be doing or anything without France. Like, France and Algeria are on the same trajectory, regardless of whether or not they're tied to one another, which is also a bit of a tenuous argument.
Whatever you decide then without France would be nothing more than beating the air.
This was the debate on Algeria in the United Nations in September 1955. Both sides
Is it done? Was that the whole debate? Was that all we're going to get to see? We have a few more minutes left of this, so I'm curious. I'm curious if that really is the end.
were now embittered. France accused the UN of unjustified interference in her internal affairs. The anti-colonial bloc accused France of unjustified colonialism.
Unjustified colonialism. Imagine being accused of unjustified colonialism, because that phrase implies that there is a justified colonialism. I think that's really funny. Like, is there in the UN Charter, like, reasons for colonialism? Like, can you justifiably colonize a place? Like, I'm curious now.
Of using methods of force and repression, and insisted that it was the duty of the UN to call attention to these injustices. In the United Nations General Assembly, tensions mounted rapidly. The issue was finally put to a vote. The exact question was, should the Algerian dispute be placed on the agenda of the General Assembly?
Interesting. So they're voting on whether or not they should be allowed to vote to determine the solution to this problem, pretty much, right? I think I got that right. France argues that it's not the jurisdiction of the UN to tell it what to do with its own internal domestic territory. But the UN is voting on whether or not they consider Algeria to be an integral part of France. And if it's not an integral part of France, then they have jurisdiction to tell France to not be a colonizer anymore.
28 nations voted to include the Algerian item.
28 nations voted to include the Algerian item. So only 28 nations thought that they should be able to tell France what to do with Algeria, I think. I wonder what 28 nations. I probably could guess some of them, but I would like to see a list.
27 voted against placing Algeria on the agenda.
Oh, that's so funny. I was thinking only 27 voted for, so then it obviously probably failed. But what I didn't really realize were how few countries were in the UN. So 28 on one and 27 on the other side. That's so funny. So did it pass then? I thought it didn't pass based on those numbers. But now that I'm hearing there's only 56 countries, 55 countries in this council, then I don't know, maybe it did pass.
27 voted against placing Algeria on the agenda. The anti-colonial bloc had won its fight for the moment.
The anti-colonial bloc. See, that's so interesting that the UN Parliament, or whatever you call this, was broken up between the colonial bloc and the anti-colonial bloc. I feel like a lot of us understand our own country's politics, right? In America, it's the Republicans and the Democrats in Congress or whatever, but in the UN, it's the anti-colonialists and the pro-colonialists, I guess. It's just it's interesting to understand the political landscape of the United Nations Parliament, or whatever you call it. There's a name for this. What is it? It's not the UN Parliament. It's something else, though. I keep thinking Security Council. It's also not the UN Security Council. What is this? What is the term for the people who vote in the UN? I don't know.
Then Monsieur Pinet, the head of the entire French delegation, mounted the rostrum. He stunned the assembly. He said,
Je déclare que dans une question,
I must state that in a matter which is essentially...
Interesting, we're getting a female narrator for the Frenchman's words. This is the fourth time I've ever heard a woman's voice in one of these old programs, and it's to read the words spoken by this French president or whatever.
Within its domestic jurisdiction,
mon gouvernement refuse
my government refuses to accept any intervention
se
of the
refait au
United
mépris des
Nations.
dispositions de la charte.
Yeah, so that's pretty expected, honestly. So he's recognizing Algeria as an integral part of France and that UN has no jurisdiction to tell him what to do within his own nation, which is the exact argument they just made. So I guess that makes sense.
Which would be in defiance of the provisions of the Charter.
Il considérera comme non avenu
It will consider as null and void any recommendation which the General Assembly might make on the
Il
matter.
va délibérer.
My government is going to consider the question,
Je le fais, croyez-le bien, avec gravité, comme
and I
avec
say
une
this in
profonde
all
tristesse.
seriousness and with deep regret.
Oh God, when somebody says they say this in all seriousness, it's gotta be something big. What does he say?
Quelle sera demain la
I do not
conséquence
know
du
what
vote qui vient
consequences
d'être
the
émis
vote which has just been taken
sur les
will have
relations entre la France
on the
et
relations between
l'Organisation
France
des Nations Unies.
and the United Nations.
Dang, so he was kind of cutting ties with the UN from France. This was an issue that France was willing to leave the international community for, which I guess that was not such a big deal in 1955 because the UN had only existed for a handful of years. But even this, he is saying that they don't care what the UN says. They will not listen to it, and he does not care about the consequences of that. That's pretty much what he just said.
A shocked assembly watched the startling climax to a bitter debate.
Dude, all the French guys getting up to leave too. That's funny. Can we see the French guy that we watched in that debate? Was he in that group or not? I don't know. I'm glad we just watched that group of guys go through those chairs for like 20 seconds. That was a really good, important shot for us to include in this. Oh, I like the French guy. That is actually funny. He was giving the thumbs up to the camera. That is really funny. Yeah, just watching all those French guys scooch past those chairs was really like necessary for me to understand.
This historic debate on Algeria took place in September 1955 and continued with increasing bitterness in the years which followed. It illustrates one of the most important results of the revolution in the colonial world, the depth and the intensity of the conflict between the colonial powers of the West and the newly independent nations of Asia and Africa.
The colonial powers of the West. It's funny how colonial powers and the West are lumped into one group, and then the recently freed people of Asia and Africa are the other group. Like, those are the two groups of the world. That is the polarization of the world. Western colonists and African and Asian colonized.
This conflict divides the non-communist world, weakens the Western community.
It divides the non-communist world. I guess that is interesting because both the colonies and the colonizers were neither communist. So I guess the only people who would agree with each other were the communists at this time. That's like a love triangle, but for like international politics, like communism and colonialism. Oh man, that is so complex. The relationships countries needed to have with one another based on how much they sided with communism versus colonialism and whatnot. That is like, that's a lot to think about.
Community and threatens peace. Well, what can be done about it? First, most reasonable men will agree that in this debate neither side is fully right nor completely wrong.
I will agree with that. I would definitely say neither side is fully right or fully wrong.
Subject people are demanding the right to run their own affairs, and this is natural and inevitable.
Subject people are demanding right to rule their own affairs. See, again, yeah, like, honestly, that's all you really need to decide who should be right or wrong in this instance. You know, like, the Algerian people themselves are asking for sovereignty. So, like, I don't know, who else can make an argument against that? That is actually also pretty funny that there was a Frenchman at the table, but there were no Algerians. There was no actual representation from the Algerian side of this argument, only from the French side. So that is pretty biased.
Most people who believe in democracy will agree that this demand is just. However, it must also be pointed out that it is no small matter to disrupt the institutions of government and society which have been developed over centuries.
Second, it is no small matter to interrupt the society that we've built over the years, pretty much is what he's saying. So yeah, I guess I get that. Like, it would be really tough for a country to just change based on like what the international community wants. Like, if you took Algeria away from France instantly, France would feel negative economic repercussions from that. And like whatever, you know, people starve in their homes as a result of Algeria being taken away from France. Like, you can't just make decisions like that for other countries. I don't know. I understand that.
Second, most students of the colonial problem feel that a colonial power must realistically and responsibly prepare its colonies for self-rule.
Must prepare its colonies for self-rule. See, this is very interesting because we are getting to see like how the thoughts of this era would affect the future, right? This is the era of decolonization. So we are getting an inside glimpse into the mentality of decolonization right here.
They must train leadership. They must develop a stable economy. And third, many feel that the colonial powers in general will not put forth energetic efforts to develop responsible self-rule.
That's pretty fair. Like, I would not expect the colonizers to actually responsibly decolonize. Like, that is asking a bit too much.
Unless they are forced to do so by the fear of violence.
Forced to do so by the fear of violence. See, that's crazy because, like, that is kind of threatening coming from the UN, that, like, all the nations of the world will attack you if you don't agree with us.
The anti-colonial bloc, on the other hand, must recognize that preparation for self-rule requires time,
So the anti-colonial bloc needs to recognize that preparing a country for its own rule requires time. Which I don't know. I feel like the people of these countries seemed awfully ready for home rule. I don't think they wanted to wait anymore. I think it would only really help the colonizers to wait. But, I guess I understand that too.
And that no one will gain if through the use of force a colonial people achieves self-rule before it is prepared for it.
Interesting. So pretty much what they're saying is nobody will benefit if you try to achieve your own independence. Like, let us give you your independence in the time frame that is acceptable for us and for our economic desires or whatever. So we'll give you freedom, but it has to be good for us as well.
One conclusion certainly seems certain. There will remain serious differences between the colonial and anti-colonial worlds.
This is so interesting to see the world posited like that. There are two halves. There's the colonial side and the anti-colonial side, and maybe the communists somewhere else, which is a whole different story. But it's interesting to see how world geopolitics were even conceptualized back then. That the big geopolitical question during this time was between colonial powers and colonized people. So it's so fascinating to get insight into how these people actually thought back then and what led them to think these sorts of things.
For a long time to come. That is why, in the words of the Belgian delegate, restraint and moderation are so necessary.
Wasn't it moderation and understanding? I don't think restraint was in there.
For without restraint and without moderation, the colonial revolution will tear the free world apart. And
the colonial revolution will tear the free world apart? Interesting. That's a very scary thing to suggest. So is that what people were really scared of? People were actually worried about the colonial revolution. People thought every single colonized country was going to rise up. To be honest, that is a legitimate fear, but it is also impressive that that never happened, that there was a peaceful decolonization. At least relatively peaceful decolonization.
And all of us will be the loser.
Oh, hang on, no, is this the title? 20th Century Revolutions in World Affairs. No, I think this is the title of the series. I think this is the same title that Europe and Revolution in the World's History. So I think this is the title of the series that this was a part of, actually. With Dale Fuller. So I think that guy was Dale Fuller. I think we've seen Dale Fuller before, too. Directed by Noel Jordan. Interesting. What's funny is this font is like the same font they used for like the Palestinian people have rights or something. I'm pretty sure I've seen this font used for the Middle East before. Script by Robert Good. We're gonna watch all the credits, by the way. I hope you know. Picture sources, United Nations. That's funny how they gave sources for their pictures. That's just, I don't know, that's funny.
The debate you have just seen was a condensed reenactment of the actual debates in the United Nations.
A condensed reenactment of debates that actually took place. But were the people who were taking part in this fictional debate for us, were they the real people still? Let's see, the cast. France is Paul Lanelow. I don't know, can somebody look these people up and tell me if they're actors or if they were actual delegates for the countries that they represented? I would be very interested to know that these people were real diplomats.
Algeria.
So we got France, Paul Lanelow. We got Belgium, K.J. Bouderis. We got...
on the Algerian question.
For Iraq, we got Hishan Baghdadi.
Statements of the delegates portrayed.
India, we got Raj Seth.
Portrayed here were.
And for Saudi Arabia, we got Elias Bashara.
Excerpted in every case from the records of United Nations proceedings without change except for purposes of compression and continuity.
Interesting. So every single thing that was said during that debate was also said almost verbatim by actual diplomats. That's very interesting because I didn't know if we were dramatizing or romanticizing or anything, but I like that. I like that the dialogue was true to the dialogue that actually took place. Produced by the Social Foundation, University of Denver, in cooperation with the Communications Center of University of Denver. Okay, so the University of Denver, shout out to them for some reason. Oh man, is this a behind the scenes? Oh man, I love this. See, I told you guys we were gonna watch the credits. Why? Because sometimes there's cool stuff at the end of the credits like this. I'm so glad I told you guys that because I'm just feeling justified for making you guys watch this now. Now that we get to see the camera that actually filmed this, like this is so cool. Like, I'm such a fan. Produced for KRMA TV Denver. So this was only for like the Denver area. And the Educational Television and Radio Center. That's, again, I have hard times grasping like who was supposed to even watch this. Was this on like standard television? I have to assume it was. But only in Denver? Was this only for people to watch in like Colorado, or could you watch this all across the country? What channel was this on? I don't know. I guess KRMJ or whatever, maybe. Or Channel 6, I guess it's on the camera. Wow, that was interesting. Or Net, is this the channel? Net, is that? We still got 20 seconds left, guys. I know the program's done, but I am investigating every last second of this. Net, I have no idea what this is. Net, is that a company? Is that who made this? I don't know.
This is National Educational Television.
Oh, okay, wow. See, exactly. That's why we watch. I keep telling you guys, National Education Television. So that was like a whole company back then. Interesting. Was that a channel or was that a company? Was there the Net channel? Would you turn on Net, or is this something produced by Net? Okay, yeah, and that is the end, finally. All right, so that was revolution in the colonial world. Wow, I feel like there was just so much to unpack here. I don't even know where to start, really. I feel like this gives you such a good insight into the inner workings of the UN during this time. Like, I feel like a lot of people don't actually understand what happens in the UN or even the framing of the argument. Like, I feel like this showed people how arguments in the UN even take place, what people even argue about. You don't argue that the Algerians are Muslims, so they belong to Algeria and not France. You argue that countries have jurisdiction over their territory. Like, that is the sort of discussion that takes place within the UN. And I feel like you don't actually get to see that sort of stuff nowadays. So I feel like getting to watch this debate, even if it was a reenactment, you still got to see and listen to the points that were being made by these people. I feel like I actually understand how the UN works now because of watching this. Maybe not how it works. I understand how certain countries come together to decide on solutions for problems now. Like, I feel like I understand the diplomatic process better because of watching this. You know, I feel like before watching this, I didn't really know how a country would talk to another country about their feelings towards their colonies or something. But now I understand like how you would have this argument, what you would even be arguing about, and what you would use to justify your arguments. You would use the UN Charter. You know, like that is the document that you refer back to. Just like how we in America refer to the Constitution, they referred to the UN Charter. I feel like I have an understanding that I didn't have before because of watching this. An understanding both of the UN and specifically of the question of colonialism in Algeria. I feel like I learned two different subjects watching this, you know? Like, I definitely have a better understanding of the arguments for Algerian colonization now from watching this as well. So that's interesting. That's interesting that we learned a whole bunch of things from watching this. this really was just a very educational ride. I'm trying to come up with more thoughts just because there was so much to unpack. This is like so interesting. This just gives you such a good glimpse of this part of the world. It's hard to describe, but what you need to realize is that there were so many conflicts taking place all across the world during this time that the UN really did have a function. And a lot of the solutions that the UN came to are the solutions that we still have today. And a lot of the solutions that the UN failed to come to are problems on the world stage nowadays. So just understanding how geopolitical problems were solved and are solved just helps you understand the geopolitics of today a lot better. So I am definitely grateful for getting to watch this. I hope you guys are too, because this really was a special one. And if you enjoyed and you would like to help support this channel, you can follow the link in the description that'll take you over to the Internet Archive. The Internet Archive is where I get all these old programs from. So if you want to support me, donate to them. And with that, again, am I done? I don't know. I think I'm done. I think I said everything. This was very fascinating. Oh, there's just so much to say. I wish I could spend hours just writing essays on why every single thing that was said in this is so interesting. But I'm going to leave that to you guys in the comments. And yeah, I think now is the time to cut to black.